Trick or treat, you beautiful, wicked beasties. It's Ding Dong Darkness time, and I'm Allison Dickson. The candy-soaked pinnacle of spooky month is here. It's Halloween, and if you've stuck with me throughout this month, you've already enjoyed some fun deep dives into some of your favorite tropes of creepdom: vampires, werewolves, zombies, and so much more. It's been such a delight seeing how each guest has brought their own unique perspectives to the topic at hand. And if you haven't listened to those yet, treat yourself and go do that ASAP. But now we're going to round out this whole scintillating shindig by bringing on a guest who is quite literally near and dear to me. They are, in fact, sitting right next to me in the same room, crammed into this den of ding-dong dankness to talk about a subject they're pretty familiar with: witchcraft and paganism, and maybe a little D&D as well. That guest, my friends, is my eldest spawn, one of my greatest prides and joys, Nathaniel Rowan Dickson. Nate is a 22-year-old artist, maker, D&D dungeon master, and literal spellcaster. And if they weren't already my kid, I wish they were. Welcome to the show, my child.
Thanks, Mom, who is actually my mom.
I am your mom.
You are my mom.
How did that happen?
That's all you.
Oh, well, it wasn't all me, but I mean, there was, your dad was there. I mean,
Yeah, he helped, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, but I did most of the rest of it. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, you were the first family member of this household.
Yeah.
To be on this show.
Yeah. I'm glad to be here. I'm always walking through the garage to get me a soda pop, and late in the eve, and I hear all the magic happening back here, and I'm like, ooh, I can't go back there. I can't make any noise, but now I can make all the noise.
Yes, exactly. You are now the center of attention. You are the guest of this show, because I finally had a topic, I think, that, you didn't have to maybe cram too hard for. This one kind of comes a little naturally to you. Yeah, so as I said before, we talked about vampires, werewolves, and what was it? Zombies. Thank you so much. How could I forget? Yeah. By the way, Nate's really good at doing this for me. Like, if we're going anywhere or doing anything, I'll forget something or I can't find something, and Nate's always there. Like,
yeah,
my other brain.
I'm like a sentient magnifying glass.
Yes. Yeah. It's another one of them spells you be casting.
Yeah.
But we're going to get down to the meat and bones of like what you do and what you like to do. Yeah. But I'm going to give sort of a quick and dirty on paganism and witchcraft for folks who don't really know where to begin on this topic. Maybe you're only familiar through, movies you've watched, or, things you heard at church, or the things you sat through in history class, or read in horror novels and things like that. So I'm just going to whittle it down. So the term pagan, and feel free to jump in whenever you like, Nate, if you have anything to say, was adopted by early Christians in the 4th century who wanted to differentiate what they were doing from the Romans, who were, in charge of things at the time. And as we know, Romans were well-known polytheists. Is that right? Mm-hmm. And eventually it came to refer to any non-Christian religion, with the implication that paganism was associated with a belief in false gods. It was really meant to describe sort of the antithesis of Christian belief, and a way for those new and passionate followers of Jesus Christ to differentiate themselves from everyone else. Do I have that right so far?
Yeah, and Constantine did a great job at keeping it separate, I gotta say. Yeah. He didn't take anything from the notes of the pagans at all. He really kept it separate.
Yeah. You can totally hear that. A little bit of Nate's religion nerdery coming out, because you took some comparative religion studies in school. And...
Yeah, theology is a passion of mine, and I've always enjoyed learning about, just, when I learned about Constantine in that class, and I was just sitting there the whole time, like, oh my God.
Yeah. And did you ever watch the movie?
No.
With Colin Farrell as Constantine? It's pretty terrible.
Oh, yeah.
We should watch it sometime.
Yeah, we should.
We should watch it, and then we can come back on here and talk about it.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty great. But I think too, as I think about how early Christianity developed and began to proliferate around the world, one could easily say that, the use of the word pagan was one of the earliest and most successful propaganda campaigns in all of human history, because pagans have been blamed, and by extension, witches and werewolves, as was mentioned in the previous. Not that werewolves are by any chance real, but they were lumped in there. But they've been blamed for every evil in the world. Practitioners or those suspected of it were killed in droves as a result, or at least were treated with suspicion or as outcasts. And, the general acceptance of pagan practice didn't really start coming into vogue until about the very end of the 20th century, if you really think about it. And really in the last decade or so, would you say? I mean, throughout your life?
I'd say it's definitely really come into the mainstream during my lifetime specifically.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it was kind of there in the background a lot in like the 80s and 90s when the goth movement was kind of in its prime and really starting to walk. But with TikTok especially now, you'll find so many people talking about their practice on there and just like sharing what things they may be doing, right or wrong, in some of their practices. But, everyone's kind of just been open about their journey spiritually more than ever, I think.
That's really cool. I mean, I've seen some of that on TikTok. It sometimes gets into my feeds as well, probably, because you share things with me a lot and everything too. And it really is an interesting, avenue to find a community and maybe learn about practices or have debates with people.
I've definitely learned some things from TikTok that I think I've integrated into my practice. I wouldn't recommend going on TikTok and starting to follow everything that everyone on there tells you. Don't do that, or else you may end up like hexing the moon or something.
That could explain why this world is going.
Yeah, that happened a couple years ago and everyone got really upset about it.
Wait, somebody actually hexed the moon?
Yeah, they tried to hex the moon and some Greek gods.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was kind of insane, and everyone was like, "Oh, baby witches are so dumb." Like,
oh my.
It's like, oh my god, guys, we just all need to calm down here.
Well, it's like the plot of every horror movie, right? It's like Evil Dead. You get a hold of the Necronomicon and you just start opening it up and playing around with it. You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's like they're committing like the modern day Tower of Babel of just like, we're gonna build this big old tower to show it to God and be like, hey, God, fuck you. Except, they're doing it. They're like, oh, I'm going to burn some spells. Fuck you, moon.
Yeah. Wow. Well, the moon is awesome. The moon, the moon never hurt anybody. Don't hex the moon.
Yeah, that's like some moon denier propaganda right there.
That is, yeah, you're right. You're right. It's those people that think, the earth, that the moon landing didn't happen, or that the moon is hollow.
Or maybe they hope it never happens. They're like, the moon's evil. No, I don't know. I don't know any practices that say the moon is evil, but don't take anything I say seriously for the record.
Yeah, well, that's part of this, right? I mean, I love getting digging deep into the personal perspective and everything, but I thought it was really interesting that like the word pagan was never a word that anybody applied to themselves. It was always a derogatory thing. So, it wasn't really until much later that people started using it to refer to themselves, because I also found it interesting that pagan, and the way I actually came to understand that word when I was a kid, and this was in the 80s, or maybe even into the 90s, because that's when it was explained to me, people would use the word pagan to mean any like primitive person or any sort of bumpkin, rustic dummy.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It was not really associated directly with like any sort of practice of spirituality or religion or anything like that, even though that's of course what it was. It was just quite literally a brand that early Christians stamped on people that didn't follow the one true God. So it's really interesting to see how it's evolved. And of course, throughout history, people have studied all these different forms of paganism and sort of narrowed them down into a few distinct categories. We start with neo-paganism, which neo refers to new. That's the meaning of that. And that was the sort of revival movement that focused on, nature revering and living. This is according to Wikipedia, by the way, but in pre-Christian religions and other nature-based spiritual religions. So it would incorporate things like Wicca, Neo-Druidism, heathenry. If those of you that are following the Delphi case, that's been in the news, if you're a true crime fan, you're going to hear a lot about heathens, Odinists, and things like that, right? That's kind of, bubbling its way back up into the consciousness as a form of sort of a satanic panic thing going on right now. But that's not for me to discuss. You should go hang out with my buddies, the prosecutors, if you want more on that. But then we have paleo-paganism, and that is a direct contrast to neo-paganism. The original, the OGs, the OG polytheists, the nature-centered faiths like the pre-Hellenistic Greeks, the pre-imperial Roman religion, the pre-migration period Germanic paganism as described by Tacitus, or Celtic polytheism as described by Julius Caesar. So this is probably a lot of the stuff like you probably learned. I think I learned a lot about this kind of stuff in like Western Civ, things like that, like sort of those early history classes. I would say that most people, when you think of that Druidic paganism, the people who built Stonehenge, stuff like that, would probably fall into that category. Yeah. If you have a Celtic knot tramp stamp, you are celebrating paleo-paganism.
That's pretty awesome.
Is that a hot take?
I mean, I'm just down to do that.
So Nate's covered in tats. Well, not quite covered, but you're getting there.
I'll get there.
That's the next one, perhaps. We'll just put that away.
Celtic cross tramp stamp.
Yes. There we go.
Tell me the Celtic thought.
We also have Mesopaganism, which has been influenced by monotheistic or dualistic or non-theistic worldviews. So it's sort of like your Aboriginal Americans, your Aboriginal Australians, Viking Age Norse paganism, New Age spirituality. A lot of these kind of things could revere a single god or not. And you'll even see that in like Wicca, right? Mm-hmm. I think they do believe in a supreme being, some of them.
I believe there's two deities, but don't quote me on that. But I believe there's like a feminine one and then there's like a masculine, like horned god that they follow. But the information I've seen on those are kind of like vague.
Yeah. And the whole history of Wicca is it's a very interesting, it requires a deeper dive, but it basically came around in the 1950s here in the US, and it sort of spawned.
I believe it originally started in England.
Did it? Oh, okay. You're right. I think I pulled that too. I didn't have that in my notes in front of me.
It's all good. I won't say much more on it because anything else I could say on it could be false. It's not my area of expertise. I just know it might have started in England. So
yeah, I mean, I know Beverly Banbury, who's been on the show a couple times. She did practice Wicca at one point. I don't know that she does. I think she might have mentioned that at some point on the show. And I have some other friends that have dabbled in it, but it all seems like really varied. It doesn't have a central tenet. It isn't like there's a Wiccan Pope or something like that. Although that would be kind of cool to ponder. I don't know.
Maybe
potential D&D.
Stuff. The pagan Pope.
Though really, I mean, we're kind of skipping around on a lot of this stuff because really, if you want to do a proper treatment on the subject of witchcraft and paganism, we'd really have to do at least a 5-part series. I mean, honestly, we could do an entire podcast just by itself. It would just go on forever. Yeah. Just talking about the topics of different types of paganism, different areas of it, and, different studies of witchcraft and the history of witchcraft that could go anywhere from ancient Greece and the Romans to Celtic Druids to Spanish Inquisition to the Salem witch trials, the sex magic cults of Aleister Crowley and his acolytes, and, all the way up to the establishment of Wicca. But that isn't what these episodes are for. I wanted to make this more of a personal thing for all the guests that I have on here. I wanted to bring them on and ask them what these particular tropes or these particular subgenres or whatever you want to call them, what it means to them personally, and then throw in some general history and trivia for good measure. With Josh on our vampire episode, for instance, he painted a picture of vampirism as an addiction that we choose in exchange for immortality. And with Brett, we talked about how the zombie is the Swiss Army knife of taboo horror, allowing us the chance to paint a picture of our current anxieties. And with Jason, we used werewolves and shapeshifters to talk about our internal struggles with our animalistic natures and our desire for transformation. So now, Nate, I must ask, because I threw every one of my guests a little curveball question ahead of the start of the show. Like I, asked Josh if he'd ever drank blood. I asked Brett if he'd ever would consider cannibalism. I asked Jason Blair if he was a cat person or a dog person. I need to ask you a question. If you could magic yourself anything, like right this second, you do magic, boom, and it's there. What is it? What would you magic yourself into? You could even turn yourself into something.
Oh, I mean, if I could magic myself into a shapeshifter, that'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah. I think that would be pretty cool.
I'm going to go be a druid and I'm going to go turn into a deer and fuck off.
That's your sort of, you want to be a deer.
Well, deer can get COVID, so maybe not a deer, but
it's true.
Something like that. I'll be a wolf.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
See,
I'll go turn into a warrior cat and live out my middle school dreams.
Oh, yeah. See if we got any Gen Z, Elder Z's listening. Shout out, or the parents of them. Shout out to the Warrior Cat series, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I used to draw those cats.
All the time.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you definitely went through a cat drawing phase. Mm-hmm. That was.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. To answer those questions, I guess I could ask you the same questions too. No, you've never dined on blood.
Not knowingly. I mean, maybe if I've cut my finger and I just put it in my mouth.
But you wouldn't do the Rhett and Link blood taco, will it taco?
Probably wouldn't.
No, that's an internet treasure, folks. If you don't know Good Mythical Morning, just go look up Will It Taco, and watch that. But okay, what about? I asked Brett where in line he would be if he was in a survival situation and there was stew of a guy named Steve in a pot and you were starving and the Donner Party.
Yeah.
Would you line up first or would you be in the back of the line?
I'd be kind of in the middle, middle back, because it's I'd see everyone else going up there and I'd be having my whole internal debacle about morals and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But then, when I see little Johnny get over it, I know that I gotta be strong.
When you see other people eating,
that'll
probably be oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't want, the bottom of the pot because maybe there's, some gristle in there or
yeah, you
something.
don't want Steve Gristle.
Yeah, so, I'll get in on it a little late. I usually come around to the trends a little late. It's fine.
Yeah, but you get there, and that's the point.
Yeah.
You're gonna get you some stew. You're just gonna think about it.
And I get the chance to scope out how other people are reacting as they eat it.
That's true.
I can brace myself for what Steve could possibly taste like.
Man, if you see people shoveling Steve in their mouth,
I might line up quicker, honestly.
I know you might actually cut someone so they can be the next stew.
Yeah. And bring over my powdered garlic and stuff too.
Damn, this is getting dark.
Yeah.
What is this, a show about darkness?
Well, and ding dongs.
Well, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so now I have to ask you, then, what gave rise to your interest in this whole paganism, witchcraft thing? And what does it mean to you? Because I, as your mom, I remember, what was it, about 4 years ago, I think, you seemed to start getting into crystals and things. things and
Yeah.
tarot decks?
Yeah, because Graham, my grandmother, got me that box of like crystals and that oracle deck and stuff for Christmas that one year. And before that, I had kind of started looking more into tarot decks at first because they were starting to get a little more popular.
Yeah.
And I was just seeing people talk about them, and I was like, whoa, this is like insane. Like, I want to be a cool fortune teller.
Oh yeah.
And so I just thought it was cool, honestly. I got into it because it just seemed like a neat thing to do. And I'd also say that my obsession with Percy Jackson in middle school contributed to definitely part of it.
Confirming all the fears of those parents out there that they want their kids reading it.
Yeah.
For fear of witchcraft.
It did actually turn me into a witch.
Thanks, Rick Riordan.
I genuinely thanks Rick Riordan.
Yeah, he's pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we like him. But yeah, so you got that that gift for Christmas, and that kind of like, you already were having an interest, but then I know like you really got into the rocks. Would you say your sort of fascination with the rocks, did that come from more of a spiritual place, or did that come more from like a hardcore geology interest place, or
maybe a little bit of both?
Yeah.
I mean, I've collected dice for so long for D&D and whatnot. It's kind of the same logic.
Yeah.
I kind of think of it because I buy new dice sets for each character I make, and I feel like every new rock I get is a new little character of sorts. But I also think they look really pretty, and I just like to have the shiny things. But they're just like kind of nice little comfort objects too.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I like looking at them too. I think I like enabling the things you like to collect, either the rocks or the squishmallows.
Yeah, I collect some pretty awesome things.
Yeah, stuffed animals for days.
Yeah.
Y'all. It's like a whole other mattress at this point. All the stuffed animals.
Yeah.
But like the tarot deck, I think has been, your interest in tarot has been sort of my opening into sort of the interest in some of these things. Cause I'm always been very kind of a spiritual blank slate for the most part. And sort of very more on the skeptical side of things. So, so when you started getting into tarot, I really liked the variety of decks out there. I liked, though, I think the sort of the divination aspect of it. Because when I looked into the history of it, I mean, they were originated in Italy, I believe it was Bologna. And
they were called like Tarocchi decks originally.
Yeah. And it was like a playing card.
Yeah,
it was,
they were playing card decks.
What now, like the playing cards, like the bicycle playing cards, the king, the queen, the joker, all those. I mean, did that, because some of the art looked very similar, like,
Yeah, I'd say it all has a pretty similar origin. And also that, like, I don't believe anyone else knows what other origin it could be. Like, a lot of it did start with playing cards, because I mean the suits in tarot do follow similarly to playing card decks. A lot of people associate, like, you have the cup suit, people say that's the heart suit.
Oh, nice.
Pentacles are diamonds, swords are spades, and then wands are clubs.
Okay.
Obviously, playing cards do not have a major arcana.
Right.
I think it'd be cool if they did, but maybe they wouldn't be playing cards anymore, and it would just be a tarot deck.
Right. Right. You've done some really interesting tarot readings, and you have expressed this sort of spiritual connection that you make, like you name it, and you have you get a personality from it. Yeah. And how does that work for you?
Yeah. So it really comes down. So like when I get a new deck of cards, I've spent time familiarizing myself with it and the art with it. I'll like do a few little readings, just pull some cards, and then I read the booklet. I think that for each tarot deck, it's important to like use the booklet for that deck, just so you can get what like the creator's intention with that card was. Yeah. You don't always have to do that. That's just a thing that I like to do. But some people will get a tarot deck and then use a guidebook that they've referenced for like years on it, and they'll never change their guidebook.
Right.
And that's cool. It's just that at sometimes too, you know, different artists will include vastly different things in their decks. But as far as like familiarizing myself with them and kind of getting their vibes, it comes down to what kind of readings it gives me and the kind of vibe of those readings. Because some of the ways that, you know, certain people will write their guidebooks is very brutal.
Yeah.
Or very, like, straightforward. And you can kind of get a sense when the cards are really digging into that. They're like, you need to know this right now.
Oh, wow.
And so that kind of gives the energy of like, oh, this deck is confrontational.
Yeah.
Because it's just pulling out the heavy hitting cards.
And I've watched you do this. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you right now, you guys, like, you can go back and listen to my episode with Brett when we talk about ghosts and his experience with ghost hunting and some of the stories that he told, and freaked me the hell out. But I am not an easy believer. I am definitely like, a lot of times when I come to things like ESP or psychic phenomenon or paranormal anything, usually with a huge grain of salt. And it's not that I think it's because anybody's crazy. It's just that I think it's because I have no experience with it myself, unless I've watched you. I think the closest experiences I've had with paranormal happenings have been in your presence.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, you have done tarot readings on me that felt like they were cutting to the bone. Or you'll do like a vibe check or a spot check or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, you know, sometimes when you're doing tarot readings, you just take out a card and you look at it and you're like, well, that's the energy of today, I guess.
Yeah.
Or like what's going on right now. I don't do those a ton anymore, but
did you ever feel like when you would do that though, that it was a kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing?
It can be, I think. Yeah. Especially, you know, something I've kind of developed more into my practice regarding my tarot lately is like more meditation before doing my readings, and clearing my mind of just like my own like biases of the situation, or like just trying to ignore the kind of noise in my head as far as like what I think is happening.
Yeah.
And kind of just trying to reach into the heart of the situation. And that's when I've gotten the most accurate readings. It's because, you know, if I want to see something, it'll often show me that.
Yeah.
And that happens with tarot cards. It does that with pendulums, which is, you know, another good one to talk about, pendulums. But, you know,
the pendulums.
Yeah. But I've often had to have my friends do my tarot readings for me, just because like if it's an emotion or if it's a situation I'm emotionally tied to, then I don't trust myself to give like a clear, unfogged reading on it. But then when my friends do it, it ends up being what I probably would have gotten anyways.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh, maybe I should just accept that, like, it's correct.
And you have, how many decks do you have?
That's a good question. I'd say at least 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say for sure.
Yeah.
Easily.
I love to collect different decks, and I collect different ones for different reasons.
Yeah.
A lot of them I'll be really drawn to the art. I mean, I kind of have to be drawn to the art for any of them.
Right.
I'm very picky when it comes to my tarot decks. I prefer to buy them myself instead of other people like buying them for me.
Yeah.
Because I know what I like. So unless they're following something that they know I'll like, then I'm like, no, give me the control over it. But yeah, I've amassed many, and most of them have names based on like readings I'll do. If there's like a particular card that keeps coming up in certain readings,
yeah, then
I'll usually name the deck after that. My first tarot deck that I ever got, I named him Judgment. Because,
oh yeah.
And that was the first time I ever named a tarot deck. And it was like a very interesting feeling when I did it, honestly. Because I was sitting in the room with in a room full of people I do not talk to anymore.
Right.
We were all doing stuff, and I was doing a reading for my deck, and I was like, doing this reading where you set all these cards in like a circle.
Yeah.
And it kind of tells you about the deck. It's like a bio reading, essentially, where it'll tell you what this deck is meant to do while it's in your possession, what it's meant to help you with, the drawbacks of it.
Yeah.
And like the final card was like the name of the deck, and I flipped it over and it was Judgment.
Wow.
Which is like the what's Doomsday? Christianity.
Apocalypse or Armageddon.
Yeah, it's like the Judgment Day card, essentially. The Rapture.
Oh, okay.
It depicts the Rapture on it.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, there's like an angel in the clouds with a trumpet, and there's like all these people on the earth like, whoa, there's an angel in the clouds with a trumpet.
This is quite literally like your god deck or something.
Yeah, kinda.
Yeah.
It's my old reliable. Like, I come back to that deck all the time, and it just feels like an old friend.
Yeah.
I got that deck at a Renaissance festival.
Yeah. It's a cool deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've done several readings for me out of that deck. And you're right, it's salty.
Yeah,
Like,
it is salty. If anyone's curious about what tarot deck it is, it's the Bianco Nero deck. I don't remember the name of the creator, but if you just look that up, it's all done in like pen and ink and scanned in. So all of the images on it are like hand drawn in traditional medium. And it's very striking, and I really like the booklet for it because it's very open-ended.
Yeah.
It prioritizes telling you what the symbolism in the cards mean, and keywords associated with the card, but it leaves it up to you to draw your own conclusions about what it's talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
So you definitely love the tarot. Mm-hmm. You definitely love the crystals, and now with the crystals, you similarly to a tarot deck. Mm-hmm. I mean, you get a vibe from a crystal or a type of or something like when you go into a rock shop, or a curiosity shop, you're going over there to look at the stones. Mm-hmm. Is there something you already have in mind whenever you go over there?
Sometimes there's always going to be like a thing that I'm kind of hoping to find. I think like. I don't know if there's like a cool crystal I heard about online recently that I'm like, oh, I want to add that to my collection. And so I'll be looking for something like that. But I find more often than not, the rocks are choosing me.
Well, too, like when we went to that place in Charlevoix, Michigan, it was this amazing woman. I will link you in the show notes. Her name escapes me and the name of the store because it just popped into my head when we went on our trip up there to northern Michigan.
It's J&J Crystals.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. Again, second brain coming in clutch. And you knew like you were just in a citrine kind of mood.
Yeah, because one little known fact about citrine, this is awesome because I was just talking to my friend about this the other day and I was like, I need to spread this information everywhere. Okay, guys, listen to me. Citrine, this is very important. If you're out in a store and you see citrine and it's like an amber color, if it's more on the orangey side of the yellow color family, more often than not, that is heat-treated amethyst. It is not real citrine. And I still think it's pretty. You can still buy it. I'm not telling you to not buy it, but it's not real citrine.
It's not going to give you the properties you might be looking for.
No, it might feel a little different. Real citrine is more of a greenish yellow color. It's very pale, kind of like a lemony hue. And it's a very powerful manifestation crystal. Yeah. Particularly. I haven't found a whole lot of like success in manifesting with crystals, I don't think. Yeah. I haven't tried it a lot. I tried it a little bit with the citrine. Yeah. Nothing I wanted has come true yet. Yeah. So it must be broken. Oh. No. Yeah. Just kidding.
We got to return it. Yeah. No, it's just that's interesting because when you do manifest, I mean, manifestation, that is basically trying to visualize something into, wishing upon a star, essentially. You're manifesting your wishes. So when you manifest, what do you do?
I kind of think about it a lot. Yeah. Like, a really big part of modern witchcraft, that you'll hear a lot of people say this word is, intention. Yeah. A lot. You set your intention, you set it in your mind, this outcome you want, essentially. or like this feeling you have, and you just like concentrate it on it a lot.
Yeah.
And like, people will manifest it physically in different ways. Some people will write down a sentence over and over again in like their grimoires.
Yeah.
Some people like just meditate on it and keep it in their head. Some people make sigils out of those feelings and burn them and set intention into the universe that way. Basically you're just drawing a little symbol, and then I prefer to set them on fire because I think it's metal as fuck.
Well, yeah. Well, I guess it sounds very familiar to me on a spiritual basis with a lot of Buddhist practice of this idea of, cultivating compassion and loving kindness. And when you manifest that within yourself, it is supposed to put that out into the world and sort of, it affects others and really boils down unsexily to something like cause and effect, or this idea of be the change you want to see. And I love the way that witchcraft, and used in the positive, by the way, reclaiming that word, it's almost never still used in a positive context. The word rich in my own brain, still 80s kid, I say witchcraft, I immediately see like a pentagram and blood in the forefront of my brain. And it's like, I see a slaughtered goat with, and it's like, come on, grow up, that is not, because it's not what I believe. It's just, that's the imprinted image.
Yeah. And like horror movies have not helped with that
not at all. I mean, The Conjuring. Can we rant for a minute about the Warrens?
Yes.
And these pieces of shit?
Yeah.
Listen, I'm getting a little more verbose sometimes than I do here. That's fine, because if you watch The Conjuring and you see the Warrens portrayed by Patrick Murphy and Farmiga, Vera Farmiga.
Good.
Yeah.
That's not something I could have helped you with.
Attractive people that seem to, have the most loving marriage ever while they're fighting the devil. The way it casts witchcraft and this dead witch, like in the first movie anyway, I have not seen the sequels. These people are frauds. These people, well, there's just been news released about them just recently that the husband was he was living with like having sex with a teenager.
Oh,
he was a middle-aged man, total, she was living in their house, and it was like part of this whole thing, like, anyway, it was a very sordid situation, and that woman has, shared her story and everything. And anyway, they are, that movie was only made within the last 7 years or so, I think.
Yeah.
Great movie for jump scares. It is like one of those movies that will make your scalp crawl.
Yeah, it's
a little
really
bit.
good the first few times you watch it, but then if you watch it too much, it gets lame.
Yeah.
And also, in the third movie, it is also all about a witch, but one who's like currently living. And I'll just say this: they totally made me think that Lorraine was gonna like get with the witch, like they were just gonna be their own lesbian power couple.
Oh, damn!
And then they weren't, and I was mad about it.
They totally queer baited you.
Yeah,
that is not cool. No, I mean, that's so really to this day, we're still seeing these negative connotations of the word witch or witchcraft. And what's interesting too is if you look at all the way back at the history of beer making, the alewives, it was a practice that was the sheer provenance of women. The very earliest, they were the original brewmasters. Wow. And the witches' cauldrons, the brooms, the hats, the pointed hats, that was part of the whole, originated from the original brewmasters of beer. And then women were then eventually removed from that practice because of its association with witchcraft around the time of the Inquisition. Yeah. And then they were booted from that, and men were brought in to start making beer.
Did they think that they were like enchanting their beers?
Pretty much. I mean, it's
not like they didn't deserve to have cursed ale. Right. Thing, they were cursing it for a reason, guys.
Right. I mean, it was just, they're too powerful. They're holding these secret covens and all this. We can't trust these women who have this power over men to get them drunk. And that's across so many cultures that you'll find that witches, witchcraft, accusations of it and all that really have ensured that this word has remained sort of a basis of fear. And that's unfortunate because there's a lot of really cool stuff. And it's, in talking about these positive things about trying to, the manifestation, the divination aspect of it is almost its own form of prayer. It's its own form of meditation. And these are things used in spiritual practice throughout the world, no matter what religion.
Yeah. And I'd say, pretty much all of witchcraft itself, especially if you're trying to make things come true, it all really comes down to intention.
Yeah.
Like, when you see people doing spells with like herbs and things like that, they're using those herbs because they have an association with those herbs that they will perform a function. Yeah. And if you add that association into the mixture of what you're doing, it's strengthening your intention, essentially. Because you're like, oh, cinnamon equals bringing like warmth and passion. I want to bring in warmth and passion, so I'm going to bring in the spice that is heavily associated by, thousands of people that symbolizes this thing. And I think, part of that, like, just that wide association by like so many people who practice is what kind of part of gives it its power. Yeah. Essentially is it's kind of like you're working with the combined intention of, other practitioners as well. Right. Yeah.
Well, so I guess that brings me then to this next question is the type of spells that you have cast, and describe a spell you've cast recently and what that ritual looks like. And you can be as I know of a few. Yeah. So, it's up to you. You decide which one you want to share.
Yeah. I guess I kind of do want to talk about hexes. Okay. Just because that's one of the spell works I'm familiar with the most, and that might frighten some people. Yeah. I promise you I'm not willy-nilly casting curses.
You're not hexing the moon.
No, I'm not hexing the moon. Okay, I'm hexing the pieces of shit that live 5 minutes down the road from me. Because it's the only sense of control I have in the situation. Right.
Too true.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. But there's a lot of fear and stigma surrounding hexes. Just because you are embracing negativity by hexing someone, essentially. At least in my mind, I'm gonna put out here that I have not been like mentored in magic or anything really. Yeah. And I've never had a very wide community of magic practicers.
You're like the Kurt Cobain of witchcraft. I'm very totally self-taught.
I'm very self-taught in my practice, and so, not everything that I do is going to reflect what other people do. I have picked up a lot of things from just the grapevine of being in like online pagan communities, but my practice is very much my own thing, and it does not dictate what anyone else should or does do.
Disclaimer, important. Yeah.
That being said, I love hexing a bitch.
My child, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else.
Yeah. You'll find a lot, especially in Wiccan practice. There's like this thing called the threefold law that anything you put out into the universe will come back to you 3 times harder. Yeah. And I don't believe in that personally. Because why is the universe trying to get up more revenge energy for what I put out there,
It kind of feels like something that's a carryover from Judeo-Christian thought.
And if that's something you believe in, that's cool. I don't think that's going to happen to me. So like whatever. I don't fear God. Yeah. Yeah. But that makes people very wary of hexes and like darker magic, because they're scared it's going to bite them in the ass.
Right.
When really, my kind of understanding of paganism is like reclaiming energy, and like, you know, finding your own power and stuff like that.
So that's what a hex is to you. Someone has stolen some power from you, and you are taking it back.
Pretty much, yeah. I don't hex anyone who I don't think has like done something to really fuck me over. Yeah. You know? But hexes in like in a mechanical sense, as far as what you do for them, can really vary.
Yeah.
But a really common one, and this can apply to more than just hexes, but is like candle spells.
Okay.
A really common way to do a candle spell is like maybe carving someone's like name or like a sigil or a phrase or something that's significant to you into a candle.
Yeah.
And then in its most simple form, you light that candle, and, you know, you could use just that to set your intention out into the world. I like to get a little more hands-on with it. One of the most recent hexes I did actually is the most recent hex, because I don't just do these every Tuesday. It's reserved for Thursdays.
Every third Tuesday.
Yeah,
or Thursday.
But I basically took this candle I had and I carved some people's names into the candle with a pocket knife I had, and the tools I used, no, it wasn't a pocket knife, it was a dagger.
Okay.
And the tools I use are significant to me, just in that, like, using a dagger to carve into something is brutal as fuck.
Yeah.
And like that being brutal as fuck, like, lends itself to the situation and the spell.
Right.
Because I'm like carving it, you know? Like, I could be stabbing a motherfucker right now. But, and so I did that. And then in the grooves that were left after I carved it, I rubbed in like chili powder and onion powder. Those are really common hexing herbs to use because they are spicy and like more quote unquote unpleasant herbs, I guess, and spices to use. Spicy stuff is very common in like hexing, but also protection spells.
I love to hex myself on a regular basis with chicken wings.
It's a fucked up ritual, man.
Is that part of osteomancy? We might get into that in a bit.
I mean, that'd be kind of hardcore if you like ate a chicken bone or like ate a wing.
Someone's name into this Buffalo Wild Wing.
Oh my god!
And put some last dab on it.
Yeah,
and just like, you know.
I mean, that's also a form of witchcraft. Kitchen witchcraft is a very like real thing.
Really? Mm-hmm. Bro.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's something I'm interested in too, just because I like to work with herbs and whatnot, and food is a very applicable thing for herbs. So you can witchcraft your food. So
when you hex this individual with this chili spice carved candle the thing, okay, what are you imagining? Like do you think they feel something? So, like, ideally in your own mind?
I feel that they will feel something. Yeah. Like, when I was doing this hex, all I was imagining, I was blasting Sleep Token on my headphones. Yeah. Because that was just the band I was so into at that very moment. And I was just, like, envisioning, like, all of the horrible feelings that person made me feel. Yeah. And that they're going to feel that exact same way because of themselves.
And this was in the wake of a very recent breakup, by the way. Just giving a little bit of context there. Yeah. So yeah, it was bad. It was
real bad.
It was very, very bad. So you were in this place of like intense pain, and this was your way of trying to channel that into something to sort of get it out of you. Yeah. And back out there. And if they can feel a little bit of that, so be it. Who among us, right, when we've been hurt and have been traumatized by somebody, doesn't have that. If you've ever felt a moment of vengeance in your life, or a moment of you're in traffic and you're just like, you son of a bitch, and they're, and you're feeling the road rage and you're yelling at the slow person in front of you, like, every one of us out there, no matter what you practice spiritually, you have felt these things. And so I want to like make sure that people understand this on a level of like, you're not this evil witch sitting there just like, you know, putting a curse on somebody.
My astral plane drive-bys are warranted.
I love that. We're gonna extract that soundbite out and put that on blast. Because I mean that's exactly right. And this is your way of channeling this and dealing with this. And in the hopes that, maybe for a few days, if they have some really bad burps or something, in addition to feeling whatever else, then the hex was successful.
Yeah. But as far as other stuff that went into that hex, it got real personal because, I found like an old poem that they had written for me and I burned it in a little bowl. And then I took the ashes of that and I, put it in a jar, which was a jar that originally had a love spell from them also. Yeah. Not like a love spell, but it was just like a nice little love jar. Yeah. With associated herbs and whatnot. That I had received back. So I took everything out of the jar. I burnt it. Yeah. I had like this disgusting concoction. Yeah. In a bowl, and it felt very appropriate because it felt like all of my rage, like in this bowl, like it was so gross. Yeah. There was like rubbing alcohol in it. There was vinegar. There was chili powder, dirt, like from like the ground. Yeah. As opposed to the sky. No sky dirt.
No sky dirt.
No.
I got you though.
Staples. Like, yeah. I put it back in the jar and then you witnessed me throw it out of a moving car.
Yeah, we were on our way to Michigan.
I didn't hit anyone with it, for the record.
No. It wasn't we were very strategic about it, about its placement. So yeah. And for all we know, it's still there. And now let's say that a little kid wanders up and picks this thing up. It wouldn't have anything for them, right? Because
no, except like maybe something really gross.
Yeah.
They'd be like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, exactly. Don't drink it, kid.
Don't do it.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah.
But I just think that, listen to this technique for all y'all out there who want to hex your ex. This is how. Yeah. You can do it.
I implemented a lot of common things from sour jars, which are basically, they're jars you make and you fill with really putrid things. Some people will spit in them, some people will piss in them, and like to add to these jars, and they're usually like big. Yeah. Oh wow. And you just fill it with horrible things and it just brings people bad luck. You just like store it in your closet or something and you forget it's there.
Wow. So those people like Howard Hughes, he collected so much of his piss in jars. He could have been hexing people for all you know.
Hexing people with it. While I have not personally tried the technique, I imagine it would be pretty effective, honestly.
If you're like Howard Hughes right now and you're listening to this and you're storing your piss in a bunch of jars because you don't want to leave the room you're in and you got to pee somewhere, you can.
No, I will say, like, people get real spiritual about their pee. Yeah. It's interesting.
There are some one-liners coming out of this. I can understand that though. I mean, because that's a really primal. It's your bodily fluid. It's I would say if you know anything about Aleister Crowley and sex magic, I mean, they were all about them bodily fluids. They were all about the poo. They were all about the pee. They were all about the jizz. They were all about all that stuff. So, and spit and all that, all part of that primal sort of earthy, sexy, magic with a CK. There ain't enough with just a C. You got to add the K on there for that kind of magic.
With a punch.
Yeah. But I want to ask you though, are there any, we talk about hexing. Are there anything that you won't do that like would cross a line for you?
I don't know. As far as like morally, I wouldn't do a love spell. Like I would do a spell that would manifest love in my own life. Yeah. But casting love spells on people can turn real bad real fast.
Oh yeah. I mean, there are some great stories out there about the kind of warnings of love potions and things like that. I mean, the original ones were like, you're creating because really love is madness, really deep in its core.
It often leads to really unhealthy obsession when people like successfully cast love spells. It makes people go insane because like they become infatuated or obsessed.
It's unbridled. I love the term limerence, and a lot of people aren't familiar with it, although they're very familiar with the sensation when you imagine an extreme infatuation that can border on obsession, but it often is this obsession driven by a fantasy of a relationship with a person that never comes to fruition, and you become more obsessed with that vision in your mind than with, the person. It's not love. It's just this idea that it gets fixated in your brain, sort of like the movie Inception with the idea that got stuck in her mind. That's like that, but with a person.
Yeah.
And so, that is not something that I would wish on anybody.
And I will say, with the hex I would say that there were some intentions put into it that could be reminiscent of a love spell.
Yeah.
Because I put in there that, like, they wouldn't be able to stop thinking about me.
Right.
And what they did.
Yeah.
But I would say that that's also something that people would put into a love spell.
Right.
Because, love and hate are on the same, two different sides of the same coin.
And really, it's something that when you go through a breakup, you, on a base level, are already, anybody who's been through a breakup is already thinking something along those lines, especially when you've had your heart broken, of, you're not allowed to forget about this. This needs to live with you and eat at you.
I have to live with this traumatizing moment, and you're not going to get away from it without at least a little bit,
Yeah.
It's a fair trade.
Exactly.
You give me pain, I give you more pain.
This is totally fair.
Yeah.
I love it because what it does is, I think, demonstrate this sort of coming to terms with your own emotions and your own feelings and processing them in a way that doesn't involve denial. It doesn't involve avoidance. It doesn't involve any of that. You were literally trying to pull from the earth some sort of remedy for what you're going through.
Yeah.
So it is kind of beautiful.
Yeah. It's kind of embracing the humanity of what's happening to you, and that everything that's happening, like, you're feeling these things because you're meant to feel. Yeah. And, like, you're kind of connecting that to the space around you. Right. At least, like, in the spiritual way. And kind of, I'm pulling things from the earth because, like, I am part of the earth. Yes. And since I have wrath, so does the earth. Yeah. And
she sure does. Yeah. We're living that, homie. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's incredible. And when you also think about the fact that, people in some way, shape, or form across cultures across this entire planet have been practicing spirituality like this since our inception. As early humans who became self-aware and became, like, looking up to the sky for answers for calamities they were experiencing, and that we do still do those things. We've put a veneer over it. We've given them different brand names, but at the end of the day, that's what it's all trying to accomplish.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And even if you consider yourself completely spiritually agnostic, you're still kind of doing a lot of these things without realizing it. Yeah. It's just that, some people apply it to different things. And I think it's really cool. And it's really about, like you said, the shared humanity of it. And, I've talked a lot about different different other spiritual practices, like these different Afro-Cuban religions. I talked about the early roots of voodoo and the early and Palo Mayombe and all these things in different episodes that just talk about the these ways of sort of like gathering pieces of the earth and putting them in a pot and adding all these different trinkets in order to build this spirit up layer by layer by layer. And it's just, again, that primal earth magic. Yeah. It's cool.
So interesting to see, like, all of the different kinds of, like, worship and practice people do over cultures, because it all feels like we're doing the same thing, essentially. There's so many similarities just branched all across it. And more, that's just mostly because, like, it seems like that is what humans are inclined to do. Yeah. Like, we kind of have a shared sense of, like, what this means to us, I think. Yeah. Even if it's not always conscious, but we're all throwing shit in a pot and setting it on fire.
This is the cauldron.
Yeah.
They're like brewing beer, or we're hexing our ex.
Yeah.
Or, we're doing something else. We're making some sort of potion.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I found too, in studying the zombies, the vampires, the werewolves and all that, is that it is literally across cultures. It unites us in such a unique and deep way. And it shows that at one point we were all on Pangea roaming around, and then the land masses broke apart, but we still held on to something.
Yeah.
Which I love. Now so then I have to then ask, how do you feel about the Ouija board? Because that's again, like a tarot deck, it has its roots as just being a game. It was not, there's a weird capitalistic, modern capitalistic bent to the Ouija board that you don't get from tarot, or some of these other ones. there is the commercial tarot. There's the Aleister Crowley decks.
Oh my God,
and,
Disney made a tarot deck, and I was like, are you guys fucking kidding me? A Disney tarot deck from Disney?
Man, I want like a Frozen one. Can we have it with
the tower can be the ice castle.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Olaf is the fool, he's hanging upside down. I don't know. But do you think it has power? Do you think it kind of you're manifesting on it? Is it just that? If it's all about manifestations, it doesn't really matter if it's on that board. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I have so many different opinions on Ouija boards. I do not believe Ouija boards are inherently evil. I think that's weird to just say that, because Ouija boards are a tool. Yeah. First and foremost. Now it does have its background in being a child's game and things like that. But I believe that there have been a good number of cultures doing similar, using spirit boards in some way, shape, or form for a long time. To me, it's reminiscent of dowsing.
Yes.
You're just kind of letting something guide your hand to show you where something is.
Yes.
It's just a really basic form of all right, your hands are going over a letter and it's spelling out something.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of different ways people use Ouija boards. I've seen people on YouTube. There was a few years ago, I was kind of going on a deep dive of Ouija board YouTubers. And some people who very much communicated with their patron entities that way. There's this person who was saying they were talking to demons and shit, but that was a part of their practice. There are people who work with demons, for the record,
right?
And that was one way that person did that, I guess.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's it's sort of a spiritual version of that lady who collects poisonous spiders, or people, well, maybe not as bad as that. I'm working with a demon. I'd much rather have the spiders. Yeah, probably. Yeah. But no, that's inherently dangerous, right? Unless if you feel that, it's opening, it can open you up to influence or
the thing is,
attack or whatever.
Some things, you'll hear a lot of people say, oh, you're opening up a door into something evil. You're only being as open as you are allowing yourself to be. Right. I don't think people realize that, in these situations, they do have control. I think, a lot of Judeo-Christian stuff has really influenced this, because, in the Bible, you see the people having gods happen to them. Right. And they're not in control of it. It's always the god reaching out to the person to, share his fucking prophecy or something like that. Right. And, the human can't do anything to stop it. Right. But in other belief systems, that doesn't really happen that much. Especially, if you take a look at Hellenistic paganism, you have to reach out to whatever you're trying to talk to. Right. That's the kind of approach that I take towards Ouija boards. Yeah. If you don't know what you're looking for, then you might not find a whole lot. Yeah. I know when we did it, we were kind of doing the thing of okay, let's see if this works. And it did move. The planchette did move.
I can verify. And it was scary a little bit. Yeah. Because just in the sense of, you have a brain that's trained by Isaac Newton and to go, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. There has to be an outside force acting upon something to make it move. I mean, the 3 laws right there. And there that fucking thing is, you got your hand on it, but you didn't move, and you could trust the other person, and so...
Yeah. It's like how when I demonstrated a pendulum reading for you.
Yeah. That was wild.
That shit also moves without me doing anything except maybe thinking about which way it's going to move, and then it moves in the way that I think it will.
Yeah.
Like I'll be like, move in the direction of yes, and then it'll start moving in the direction of yes, and I'm like, yes.
Yeah. And that
it's weird.
It made goosebumps just come out all over me, because when you're sitting there watching this happen and it's completely outside what you understand fundamentally as physics, then it makes you feel like you've stepped outside your own body. And it's something that I really enjoyed. And it made me want to delve a little more, just even from the psychological aspect of it. I love... I'm a psych nerd, so I love looking at, how the human mind interprets these things and, what that means. And so I don't feel inherently afraid of Ouija boards. I think, again, it's that programming that we've had, growing up as kids. And my own parents have had weird experiences with them. And so have my aunts, apparently. And I believe them because I don't think they would have reason to lie. Does that mean that they have misinterpreted in their minds, and memory is a weird thing? Possibly. But I also believe in their conviction of, I heard this thing growling in the closet.
They certainly believe that it happened.
And it struck deep fear into them. And my dad especially, which is interesting because my dad just does not display any religion on him at all. But you get that man talking about ghosts and Ouija boards, and he'll talk all damn day.
Yeah.
And he seems very intrigued by it. Of course, yeah. When Dad was in control of the remote, when I was a kid, it was like Unsolved Mysteries or some alien show or something like that, because he'd always want to watch that kind of stuff. I think it really it's the fear that we assign to it of possibly touching something on the other side and bringing something back.
Yeah.
And so much of the lore that has been fed to us against paganism and witchcraft has been born of that idea that you're welcoming the devil in. And even things like yoga to some people feel like they could be welcoming in, or meditation, because you're opening your mind. That's the whole point of yoga and meditation. A lot of Eastern spiritual practice is the idea you're opening that part of your mind, and that fear, if you come from Western practice, is you're possibly letting in a demon or the devil.
But like, what if you're also letting in Jesus,
Right.
Like, you guys could be missing so many opportunities.
I know. You could
Maybe Jesus is knocking at the door.
Listen, he has been waiting. You can look at him through the Ring doorbell in heaven. He's like standing there on your porch.
Yeah, and he's like looking directly into the camera.
Yeah, he's like leaning down.
He's like, you want some bread?
Yeah, man, he's just coming to hang out. But no, really, I think you're right. You could be letting something positive in, but you could also like maybe get some affirmation of some kind.
And
or,
there's also ways to protect yourself spiritually. I added a bunch of sigils to the Ouija board.
You did.
You thought it made it not work.
Yeah, it could have been so much stronger.
No, but here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. If it did work and there wasn't any protections on it, what does that mean?
We could have really been communing with someone angry.
Yeah, it could have. It meant that maybe it was warding off something that was meant to be warded off. Because I added sigils to it that were meant to inspire like honesty, full breadth of like knowledge, essentially, openness and focus.
Yeah.
So if there was a ghost that was like, oh, I'm going to go fuck with these people, then the honesty sigil's like, banish you, demon.
I mean, really, I think a lot of our fears around this do kind of come in from that confluence of, Christianity that we were raised around, and in our culture, it seeps in, even if you didn't go to church every Sunday, those values are so ingrained in our society that it's just in the way it finds its way into our books and our movies and all the stories that we tell. So I don't necessarily fear the devil from it. But The Exorcist is one of my favorite movies. So, that was a Ouija board. So even that's always kind of like, again, in the back of my mind, like what could be, on the other side of that. And do we want to talk to it or not?
Right. See, if you're really good at setting boundaries, then that's a great foundation for using Ouija boards. And things like that. Yeah, that might be the problem.
I want to be your friend.
Yeah, because you could be like, bitch, don't come in here. And they're like, okay.
See, I can't even like get our cats to eat on a regular decent schedule. So let alone, how can I get a demon to, stay on the other side and just chill?
Because you can also think of it like this. Like, whatever you're communicating with on the Ouija board can only communicate with you if you have your hands on the planchette.
Right. Oh, okay.
So it's completely up to you. You can say goodbye at any time.
Yeah. You can hang up from this spiritual party line, man. You do not have to keep talking.
Yeah, and like you might be like paranoid afterwards because you're like,
then just swipe left and move on.
Honestly, yeah. I ain't using my super like on this one.
So if you ever like out in the online world encounter people that thought you were the devil, or a devil worshiper, do you deal with any of this kind of satanic panic, antiquated thought? I mean, I know you deal with it on the basis of all the, the LGBT, gender stuff, but like spiritual practice.
Yeah, I don't think I get called a devil worshiper for the fact that I'm a pagan. I get called a devil worshiper for having metal in my face.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. You have piercings and tattoos, but you are still spawn of the devil.
And also, in a lot of spaces like online, my practice doesn't really come up in any place where people would maybe want to be hostile to me about it.
Yeah.
But kind of in a similar vein, if you talk about astrology anywhere online, people will descend on you like a fucking pack of vultures. Yeah. It's insane because they're like, it's all fake. The stars are stars.
Yeah. Oh, and that's another thing. Yeah, you do like the astrology angle as well, don't you?
And it was interesting. There was someone on Facebook talking about like there was like a whole thread on astrology and the discourse of it, and I was like, I'm gonna get in there. And then I was like, well, astrology is very much also like a spiritual thing. And then this person was like, no, it's not. Oh, and I was like, get out of here. Yeah. We shouldn't be talking right now. If you can't admit that astrology is a spiritual thing.
I think it's funny to see people that often will kind of laugh in the face of astrology are themselves religious. I find that interesting. Sometimes you can always expect an atheist, like a hardened atheist, to be a dick about anything having to do with spiritual practice. But it's funny to see it from people that do have spiritual beliefs. And
when I see Christians shitting on astrology, I'm like, this is not
your religion was founded upon the basis of following a star. Yeah. To a place to give birth.
Yeah, God made the sun. He was like, let there be light.
Or no, it was the three wise men following the star. It was one of those. They were following the star to the Jesus.
Star led him to Jesus.
Yeah. How can you be against astrology?
Maybe that's how we get them to think we're like cool, is we tell them like, yeah, man, all of these stars are leading us to Jesus.
I think really it's like all of this stuff to me is both, on the one hand, it can be entertaining just in the aspect of like this horoscope. Is this me today? Is it like, does it match? And then you get that little dopamine rush of like, ooh, that was kind of cool. Yeah. Like that got me today.
And there's also a ton of misconceptions about astrology too. Yeah. People like to bastardize it a lot because they just don't know a lot about it.
Well, yeah.
And there are people who like claim to be astrology snobs and they're like they base their entire version of you off of what your sun sign is.
See, that's become a meme now.
Yeah, and I'm like, guys,
it's like,
you're really ruining it for the rest
like,
of us right now.
There's the meme of like the teenage, usually the son, like yelling down, "Hey mom, what time was I born?" And she's shouting up, "Get away from her!"
Yeah, stop talking to that girl.
Yeah, it's like, oh, somebody's getting their star chart done.
It's so funny. I've been asking that so much. Like whenever I started talking to new people online and whatnot, I'm like, "Can I see your chart?"
Yeah,
and it's kind of both. It's also a litmus test to see if they're an asshole or not. Because you know, if they're like, "Oh, I fucking hate astrology," then I'm like, "All right, I'm not talking to you anymore."
Good, swipe left.
Yeah,
like we're done.
But then if they like gladly give me their birth time and shit, I'm like, "All right, we're working with fire here."
Yeah. Well, I didn't know any of my star chart stuff until you plugged it in. I mean, I was always into astrology type stuff when I was younger. It was one of the things I looked for most when I was on the early internets. I was like, okay, let me see if I'm compatible with this person, or what sign is like my husband gonna be one day. I mean, being a kid, you're doing divination. If you ever played MASH, actually, I talked about MASH on an episode about Bloody Mary or Light as a Feather, Stiff as a Board. All forms of divination that we have played as games as little kids. And so then you start actually growing up and getting into relationships, and then you want to know. It's almost like a way to gut check yourself too. Because even if you're not assigning spiritual practice to it, usually you're already looking for a red flag. And that's a way to go like, okay, does this echo what was already in my gut?
Yeah.
Or not?
Yeah. Like, if you're excited about the fact that you're talking to a Gemini,
ooh,
Geminis are cool.
Geminis are quite cool. I've had fun with some Geminis, and then I've had some scary times with some Geminis.
What you gotta watch out for, honestly, is the moon and the rising signs. Yeah. Just because your sun sign is your ego. Yeah. I don't know how to articulate what the hell that means, honestly. Yeah. But I know that your moon sign is your like emotional state, and your rising sign is the mask that you unknowingly present to the world. I see. So like, you always tell me I come off as like really confident and like an extrovert, and things like that. I attribute that to my rising Sagittarius, because those are the exact qualities that you tend to have when your rising sign is in Sagittarius. I see. And things like that. So, you know, if you believe astrology, then that's like a working example of it, essentially. Right. And then like my moon being in Libra, I'm very like passive and kind of hidden away. Yes. That's very true. That's very true. I would say like, you don't usually wear your heart on your sleeve. Yeah. So you're kind of the opposite of me that way. You're very much like your dad that way. Yeah. I would almost wonder if you were in a similar area of your star chart or not with your dad. Maybe. You know? Air signs in moon sign tend to be like that, definitely, of just like, we're gonna pretend we don't have emotions in public. Exactly. I mean, good. That's good. I mean, you're an Aquarius, and you're an Aquarius as in moon. I'm so sorry. Oh, we gotta find out. I know that your uncle's an Aquarius. I'm a Scorpio. It's Scorpio season, babies. Yeah. Shout out to my Scorpios, Avon and Theo, and my mom. That's right. My dad. Yeah. I mean, you know, we got a lot of Scorpios in our life, and I think it was like somebody a Capricorn. One of them is a Capricorn, and the other one's a Scorpio or something. Yeah, like that. You're like a rising Capricorn. No, you're a rising Virgo, and I think your moon is in Capricorn. That's right. That's right. And you know, I probably try to stay very grounded with your emotions. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, when you can. And you know, the analytical stuff and the sort of the search for answers kind of person. I'm a seeker, knowledge seeker. So, and that always seems to track. I mean, I have honestly always felt a little validation in some form. And I know that there is a lot of psychological study behind, you know, why we identify, or do we make ourselves identify? Can we make it fit? But I think there is also just this need, even if you're looking at it just in the damn newspaper that day to see what your horoscope is, to just feel like you're touching with base with the universe in some way. Yeah, like you're being seen by something. Yeah. And that's all we want. I mean, what any spiritual pursuit is about that. And honestly,
pivoting over real quick as we start to wrap this up a little bit here, we're getting into the latter part, is your interest in D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, for those who aren't aware.
If you've been living under a rock for like 40 years.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, my brother played D&D when I was a kid. There was, again, back in those days, sort of a association that it had with the occult. And that all, there was a lot to do with the Satanic Panic back then. But even prior to that, are you familiar at all with the story of James Dallas Egbert III?
I don't think so.
So,
not by name.
He's probably the reason you even know what D&D is.
Oh, wow.
And that is because he was a student at the Michigan State University back in 1979. He was 17 years old. He was born in Dayton, Ohio, in Huber Heights.
Oh, wow.
I learned that today.
Huh.
This is a very local. This dude was in our backyard.
That's awesome.
This was the year I was born. So, I mean, this was very much before our times here. But he was a student at Michigan State, and he went missing. And so as the investigation was going on, they were trying to find out where he would have gone off to. He had a lot of mental health struggles. But he also, they found that he played D&D. And not only that, the students that would play with him, there were legends that they would go wandering around in these steam tunnels that were, you know, beneath the school, and they would play live action. They would LARP down in there.
Nice.
And that he got lost and died perhaps, but there was a lot more to it. But the problem is that lore took off like wildfire. It got into the news. It was spread everywhere to all these media outlets saying that Dungeons and Dragons was this bizarre and secretive cult that, you know, players could only join by invitation. And, you know, they would do all these things, these occultish things. And turned out he just skipped town and was just kind of moving around Michigan where he was in school. And then he left down to New Orleans for a while, came back. He came and went a lot, but ultimately he died of suicide in 1980, almost a year after the story that broke wide about the D&D thing. And in fact, it became such a huge story at the time that there was a movie that some of you might be familiar with called Mazes and Monsters that starred Tom Hanks, and sort of the movie based story of this kid's like disappearance and stuff. It was highly pumped up at that time. And in fact, when that movie broke and when the book came out, the huge publicity of it just spurred a huge explosion of the popularity of Dungeons and Dragons. When in fact the game itself had nothing to do with his suicide. He just struggled very much with depression. It's a very sad story. He was only 17 years old. But his tragedy kind of gave rise to the popular explosion of the game. And so here we sit in 2023 and we're on the other side of like COVID right now. But I would say it was probably during that time when you really got into it, right?
Yeah, I would say because I started playing it in like very late 2018 with my ex from high school and their sibling. And we started out playing actually the old version, one of the old versions, 3.5. But yeah, it definitely became a bigger part of my life, I'd say, in 2020. Just because I was in like a pretty consistent online campaign with some good friends at the time.
What is it about it that you would say invites that kind of this fear? I mean, is it complete ignorance? Because I mean, is there anything in it that you would say? Is it because again, we're coming back to divination, manifestation, but only that you are assuming the role in the mind of another character. But it's no different from like acting, like play acting.
Yeah, no, I feel like I'm an actor. I feel like I could be an actor from playing D&D. Like I feel like I'm in theater. You know, living the theater kid dreams that I wasn't able to in high school.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's so interesting to see the convergence of your interests this way, because you were already into the paganism, and then you got into D&D, and then all of these things that are kind of like form the satanic panic nexus. Have you ever read a Chick tract? Are you familiar with what those are?
No.
So Jack T. Chick, he was a cartoonist and a writer. He was a big conspiracy theorist, religious nutbag.
Oh, wow.
At some point I will have to do an episode, maybe even a ding dong ditch on him. But I want to pull up really quick a Chick tract that he wrote. He's most famously known for all these little booklets that would come out, and that would, by the end, it would have some morality play, and by the end some kid would come around to accept Jesus. So he wrote something called Dark Dungeons, in which a girl gets involved in Wicca through occult training, and she receives while she's playing Dungeons and Dragons. And then she converts to Christianity and rejects the game and burns the materials in order to avoid hell. And it plays out, and you can see the art as an artist. Yeah, it looks like a political cartoon.
It does,
or something like that. But Chick tracts, because they were full on books that he wrote, but then the tracts were like these little leaflets.
Oh, okay.
But then the Jesus salesman would knock on your door.
Jesus salesman.
Whatever. What was the word? I'm even looking.
Missionary.
Thank you.
The Jesus salesman.
Same difference. And they would sometimes leave those leaflets, and sometimes it was a Chick tract, and it was and you would just read it, and it was like this little horror comic, if in the mind of a kid who's terrified of God and retribution.
That's this is so insane to me, because I've been talking to you about the D&D campaign I'm writing right now. About, there's going to be supernatural stuff in it. And I am including content about spiritualism kind of. Yeah. But if there was a way that I could teach my players Wicca just through playing D&D, that would be awesome.
Well, exactly.
There's not enough time to do that shit in a D&D game.
I remember this fear of even the dice that people would have during the 80s. They would think that was sort of like your rolling chance on, again, possibly letting a demon into you. I mean, it all comes down to this fear of possession by the devil, which is really interesting, because I don't think there's really any devil. There's no devil in witchcraft. No.
And I mean, there might be devil figures that people recognize in their own faiths, but witchcraft isn't inherently religious. Yeah. You can be non-religious and practice paganism and witchcraft. Because the religious part, it goes into worship, but not every witch worships something, Right. I don't really worship anything. I mean, I will kind of revere certain deities, but whatever.
It's just interesting. People just associate, these sort of role playing games with all this stuff where, people were tying, people that were into D&D would be in, they would be in these suicides, or they would be in satanic ritual abuse, cults and things. And really, again, satanic panic is another episode unto itself. And I definitely will go there. Although I highly recommend that people listen to the last podcast on the left series on Mike Warnke, who was basically the architect of the sort of more modern satanic panic that really had its heyday in the 70s and 80s. But it's a fascinating topic, but I thought I would bring it up because, again, this it all ties in for you. Yeah. And I guess what I should ask next is, when are you and Satan getting married?
Next November.
Oh, damn. I gotta wait that long?
Yeah.
Well, it gives me time to save up for your honeymoon, because I really wanted to give you something special, like maybe a trip to Thailand or something. Yeah. Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I heard there's a pretty cool underworld cave over there.
It's kind of how we roll. I mean, I want to welcome him to the family, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I mean, I guess it's kind of funny because I just sit here as your mom, and I'm just I'm supposed to feel like it's the world's worst nightmare that I had a kid that
I'm into all of the things that were just shunned.
Well, it's a lot like raising my brother a little bit, because he was into all that stuff too. I mean, it was you're in a lot of ways following some of those footsteps of like, yeah, you were into the D&D. You're not on skateboard.
Yeah.
That's pretty much,
Yeah.
that was one of his signatures.
Yeah, I can't skateboard.
No, neither can I. I never got that. But you're both, you both draw a lot. And like,
we're way too similar. It's weird.
It's very true. It is very true. And you know, just being the kid of like a couple Gen Xers, I think you just kind of took on that extra spicy bit of Gen X.
That like with the internet, because, you know, I mean, I found out a lot about the things I'm into through the internet.
Of course.
That like I probably wouldn't have been introduced to otherwise, really.
No, I think about that a lot. Like if I'd had the internet when I was a good bit younger, because I didn't get online until I was 18 or 17 or 18. So by that point, I was already kind of like more or less hardened into what I was. I mean, I definitely developed more as an adult from it, but but as a kid, being able to come up with all that info.
One kind of funny thing though about like performing rituals while playing D&D is that I have made my players do a chant in the dark around a single candle to summon a death goddess. So
listen, you were validating the fears.
I wrote out like a whole creepy ass chant and everything.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
And now this new campaign is like vampires and stuff, right?
It's all vampires and gothic and a lot of religious zealotry.
Nice. And you're tying in like all these interests you have in like you said, forming systems of government and, you know, building that whole world and backstory. And
I'm making my own religions and shit.
Yeah. And you get to make your own world. And that's kind of the beauty of it. And again, it gets in touch with that sort of like, you know, primal bit of creation, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think people need to fear this stuff.
No. I mean, maybe like, if you're like a huge asshole and you don't like people being really like, you know, rebels about shit, then maybe be scared.
Yeah, that's true.
If you suck, then be scared. Yeah. But if you're not a total douche nozzle, then like, whatever. Yeah, you'll be fine. And that's just a good rule in life in general. Yeah. Regardless. Yeah, it's like, you know, the rule of thumb is just like, don't fuck with people who you don't want to fuck with you. Yeah. And that applies to everything.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to fuck with a biker gang.
No, not at all.
But it's not because I think they're evil. Right. I just can't take them in a fight.
Right. I get in touch with like the rules of nature a little bit, right? Now for the quick lightning round, as we wrap this up, what is your favorite crystal?
Oh God. Well, I'm really partial to amethyst. I've had that one amethyst geode that I got from the gift shop on Mount Rainier. Yeah. Since I was a kid. I still have that.
Oh, yeah. That's a really pretty one.
Yeah. So amethyst is a staple. I love carnelian, moss agate, garnet.
Oh, I love garnet.
I love so many rocks.
Yeah. Rocks rock.
They do rock.
Is there a movie like that do you do a lot? Because I made you watch a couple. We watched like Practical Magic. We haven't watched The Craft yet together, which they call Mean Girls But Goth.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I think you'd be into it. Yeah. That's like a 90s witchcraft staple. Nice. But can you think of any, or maybe it's like anime, or because I know you've watched a lot of different things that I haven't watched. But
honestly, I wouldn't say that I consume a lot of media pertaining to the occult, because I think the way people make it is super lame and dumb.
So yeah, like you'll have to think really hard, like what are some ones that have actually done it in a way that you know, isn't stupid.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, all they do is they just like show like Norse runes, like the Elder Furthark runes. Yeah. And they're like, oh, it's evil. And I'm like, that's just an old ass alphabet, man. That's literally all it is.
Or is it murder evidence on a tree in Delphi, Indiana?
There's a pentagram.
Oh no. What does this rune mean? Is like these sticks are in a pattern. No, they're just sticks on the ground.
Yeah, no. The pentagram is, the more technical term for it is a pentacle, and it just symbolizes the earth itself.
Yeah. Isn't it something like each of the 5 points in it or something is symbolic or not?
It might be.
Or some people say it's the horns of a goat, you know. I don't know.
That might be like, I don't know much about that.
Yeah.
That sounds like it could be propaganda.
Yeah. Oh,
especially if it's like a goat head.
That's the journey you constantly have to walk with this stuff, is really how much of it is actually true, or how much of it has been built up by Hollywood, or anything else. What would you offer though to someone, like what would you offer advice wise to someone who's looking to kind of start exploring?
I would say find like one specific little area and just start learning about it. Like I kind of got into all this through just doing tarot and wanting to like expand on my tarot craft and see what other options there were. But learning, I'm just going to use tarot as an example. Learning about things in tarot can be really useful for other areas of practice, because there's a lot of universal symbology in tarot that can apply to like other things. Like you'll see a lot of pomegranates in tarot, and those always symbolize like fertility and like motherhood and things like that. And so I think, finding an area, find a little niche to kind of start out with and get comfortable with, and then like, I don't know, reach out to other pagans around you and see what they do, and see if maybe you could fit some of what they do into your craft, because it's all kind of, we're just like sharing stuff. And it's a great way to kind of explore community and really get in touch with what's important to you as you do it. And also, don't be too big for your goddamn britches.
Right.
Do not be hubrisly inclined. Don't hex the moon.
Don't. As we round that off, I think that is like the perfect piece of advice.
Don't hex the moon.
Well, there you have it, my friends. Do not hex the moon.
Don't do it.
And I'd say that's a pretty good primer and explanation for like a practical view of paganism, of witchcraft, of, hexing your exes or other people.
There's so much nuance that I could go into on like every single thing we talked about. Like so much,
Well, then maybe if people are listening, they want to learn more, they can reach out. And we can do this again.
Like and subscribe, guys. Yes. If you want me back.
Smash this like button. We'll get this on YouTube one day.
Because I'd love to be able to dedicate time to kind of different forms of divination and stuff. And, talk about tarot on its own, or pendulums, or rituals and shit.
I mean, this is Ding Dong Darkness Time. This is kind of what we're geared toward. You named this show.
I did name the show, so you have to have me back.
You did the art.
And I mean, little fun fact, I mean, Ding Dong, the logo, he's kind of based off of the all-seeing eye.
Yes.
The evil eye.
The evil eye. Absolutely. Yeah, that little doorbell. Anybody look a little closely. That's what that is.
Stare into his eye.
And I gotta say, as we're wrapping up here, that in this great month that we had with these guests and these discussions, the episodes over the next month or two are going to be a little more sporadic, because I'm working on a super secret, as of right now, project that that will be announced soon, once some artwork is finished. Nate is in on the secret.
I know all the secrets.
And it's going to be really, really exciting, and I cannot wait. And I have to go through a lot of preparations to get there. So, episodes will come as they come, as we wind out the year, and then 2024 is just going to be, it's going to be a wild one, guys. Lots going on. So, so stay tuned as I start making those announcements. And you can be in on those announcements if you follow my Facebook page, the Ding Dong Darkness Time podcast, or you can follow me on Twitter at dddarknesstime. You can also reach out to me at dddarknesstime@gmail.com. And, things will be expanding in other directions soon as this super secret project gets up off the ground. So thank you very much, my lovely child.
You're so welcome
for joining me, and we will have you back, because I think you had a good time.
I think I had a good time too.
All right, man.
I'm fairly certain that I had a good time.
All right. Well, that's awesome. Well, let's get off of here and go do something fun.
Yeah.
All right, sweet. All right, guys.
We're gonna go summon Satan.
Yes. Hell, Satan.
Time for him to meet my parents.
I know. The wedding is coming up very soon. This episode was produced by yours truly, Allison Dickson, and wouldn't be possible without the amazing contributions of countless friends, family, and supporters. Big shouts also go out to Nathaniel Dickson for all the show art, as well as Spencer Morlock and Ken Dickson for the music. I'll be back with something new next week. In the meantime, you know what to do. Be good, you little ding-dongs.